Our speaker today is Melvin Juette. Melvin is director of the Dane County District Attorney's Office of Deferred Prosecution Program. He has published his autobiography and has represented the United States in numerous international competitions as a wheelchair basketball player and a coach. Since becoming paralyzed, Melvin has spent his life helping others see the opportunity of adversity and showing the inclusive use of sport to overcome obstacles and misperceptions in order to convey the message that it is ability, not disability, that counts. We look forward to your presentation, Melvin, and we've made a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund as a way of saying thanks for speaking to us today. Melvin has agreed to take questions if there's time at the end, and so audience members, please wait for a microphone to ask your short question. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Andrea, for that introduction. I also want to thank Carlos for inviting me to come out and making the connection to have me come speak to you guys. And I really just want to take a moment to share with you a little bit about my journey and part of my story. And a lot like the title is, talk about opportunity of adversity. I have dealt with a lot of adversity in my life. One of the first adversity I think about when I was 16 years old, I don't even say victim of gang violence because I don't consider myself a victim. I was a survivor of gang violence. At the age of 16, I got involved in an altercation with a young man and he shot me in the back. And you could think about that. All of a sudden, my whole life and the direction my life was heading changed. I remember being in that game room and laying there once I got taken to the hospital thinking that, man, I may not be able to walk again. Like so many young black males on the south side of Chicago, I was caught up in an environment and culture where I felt that people had to respect me. And when I looked at respect and I think about it, it was something that I cherish and I valued. But if you think about people who you respect and you look up to, it's people who are hardworking, dedicated, has discipline, desire, devotion. That wasn't me. I was the one who earned my respect through intimidation, through violence, through fear. I loved to fight when I was growing up. I was the type, if I walked in a room and you looked at me, I would confront you. If you looked at me again, I would beat you up. And so that's what I thought, that I wouldn't live to be 21 years old. That's what my thought of life. Although, and it's interesting because I think I was actually involved in gangs, but I also was an honor student. In high school, I had a 3.6 GPA. I was on the football team, but I quit the football team 3 times. Most of you people probably in here are Packers fan. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, Bears fan, get that out there. I actually played football with Chris Zurich, who was the Chicago Bears linebacker. And when he first tried out for the team, I was one of the studs on the team looking like, who is this guy? But I quit the team because, like I said, I wasn't disciplined to stay involved in the sport. 3 times I quit the team. But the coach kept having me come back because I was really good and talented. I ran a 40-yard dash in 4.2 seconds. So that was fast. And he knew it, so he gave me a lot of liberty as far as the rule. So there I was, 16 years old, involved in gangs, get shot, now I'm in a wheelchair. That was the adversity I had to learn to deal with. One of the things that got me involved when I was 16 was I went to the Rehab Institute of Chicago. Being involved in the Rehab Institute of Chicago, I met the coach of the basketball team, Bob Trotter, and he talked to me as I'm sitting there in the hospital and asked me if I would be interested in playing wheelchair basketball. My first thought was, if it get me out the hospital for the day, yeah, I'll do it. So he took me to my first game. The first game I played in, most of you guys see me when I came in, I have this really light titanium chair, custom fit to my body, where I was in a hospital chair, and all these guys had sports chair, and I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, meaning that when they went down to this side of the court, I was here. I was so slow, then I went back, they went the other way. It was like that the whole game. Then finally, at the end of the game, the coach called the timeout, the game is on the line, they designed the play. The play wasn't designed for me, but I end up with the ball. And I remember when they passed me the ball, everybody's like, no! I got the ball, I caught it, I just threw it up in the air. It went in, and because I was still in the hospital, I had a curfew. I had to be back at the hospital by a certain time. I went back, but my head was just racing. Wow, this is it. And the coach came back and said, hey, I bet you was really good. If we gave you a sports chair, you'd probably be really good at this game. And I was like, Yeah. He gave me a sports chair. Then all of a sudden I had status because everybody else in the hospital had hospital chairs. I had this nice sports chair, and they was like, hey, where do you get your chair from? I'm like, I'm on a basketball team. And one of the things that wheelchair basketball helped me to move beyond being a victim of gang violence. It introduced me to a world where I can dream, believe, and achieve with passion, poise, purpose, confidence, integrity, and dignity. And I have been fortunate because since getting involved, one of the things when I first got involved, I started playing. My junior year in high school, I got shot. So I missed the whole fourth quarter. But because, like I said, I was an honor student, they passed me. My senior year, I got transferred to a different school in Chicago, which I hated this school because they put everybody with a disability all together. And they didn't realize that people, just because you had a disability, you had the potential to do so much more. So they excluded people. And so that was kind of really problematic for me. But my senior year, I got involved playing wheelchair basketball, and I became really good. I was the only senior on the team. And as a result of that, the coach from UW-Whitewater started recruiting me to go to school. And I thought it was really exciting that when I first met him that he was talking to me about going to school, and I was like, okay, yeah, this coach recruiting me. This is awesome. And it's interesting because once I decided to come to Whitewater, now I grew up on the south side of Chicago, being involved in gangs, I was actually involved in church and all those things. I weren't around a lot of white people, so I wasn't accustomed to it. My first year in Whitewater, I remember driving from Chicago, taking 94, going Highway 20, getting in this town, seeing all the farmland. Major culture shock for me. So I get there, and the first thing, my parents just dropped me off. They got the hell out of Dodge. They was like, they said if you need anything, just ask, they'll take care of you. I get there, and the first thing happened when you go to college for the first time, they have an ice cream social. I went there to the ice cream social. I remember sitting there, and if you can imagine, when I go to places, I try to see somebody I know, somebody with a disability, somebody of color, different things. I go there, and I'm sitting in the corner, and if you can imagine this table right here, it's all white cloth. If you take a little piece of pepper and put it down, it sticks out. That's how I felt my first year in college. And my first year in college, I didn't do too well in college. Although I was an honor student in high school, when I got to college, you can imagine being in a totally unfamiliar environment, being on a basketball team. We practiced every day. We had all the expectation. And, I want to experience college life. So my freshman year, I flunked out of college. And once I had started playing wheelchair basketball, my goal was to be the best player in the world, play at the highest level. And that would have been representing the United States. I had the opportunity to travel overseas, but because I flunked out of school, I had to take summer school. I remember my coach saying, you screwed up, now you can't play. And you have to get your grades together. So we had a study skill course, which eventually incorporated that as part of the curriculum at Whitewater, but before they didn't. I remember the Professor Anderson, he met with me, we was going to do a one-on-one study skill class. And the first thing he asked me was, hey, do you like to read? We're going to have books you read. I'm like, I don't like to read. Why do I want to read? I'm like, I had too much, I wanted to do other things. He's like, you have to go read. You're going to have to read, you're going to have to write a report. The first book I ever read cover to cover was The Godfather. I thought, hey, I saw the movie, it's an awesome movie, I read it, wrote a report. But one of the things, as I started playing, I remember that moving forward, after I became a better student, I became a better basketball player. And in 1992, I had an opportunity to try out for my first U.S. national team. I went to the training camp. I was the top college player coming to the training camp. I led my team in scoring, rebound, assists, and my coach would jokingly say turnovers. And then I would always tell him, hey, I never passed the ball, so how can I turn it over? So that's not true. So when I got to that training camp, I didn't make the team. And that's another adversity I had to deal with. When I didn't make the team, I did like a lot of people do when you're not successful in life. You don't look at what you did, you look at others and you blame other people. And I started accusing that coach of all types of things. Oh, it was a rigged system. He just didn't like me. He was racist. He was all of these things. And then I heard that it's what you do when you don't have to do it that will determine what you can be when you can no longer help it. It's not doing what you like to do, but liking what you have to do that makes the world a difference. And good things come to those who wait, but here's a rule that's slicker. It's what you do while you wait that gets you that much quicker. And so if you think about that, that's absolutely true. And then I thought about it that although I was a really good athlete in school, I did everything my coach told me to do, nothing more. all of the extra workout, I didn't do those things. If he said we had to do it, I did it. So then I had to commit myself and say, I want to make the next U.S. national team. Now, I had graduated from college at that point, and I was working as a probation parole agent here in Dane County. So every day after I got off work, I usually would work about a 10-hour day. I would go to the gym after I got home from work, and I was practicing putting in at least 2,500 made shots once I got home. So I was driven that my goal was to win a gold medal. I got an opportunity to try out for the U.S. team in 1994, went to the Olympic Training Center. And you can imagine being there for the first time, being on the bus in Colorado Springs, seeing the Olympic rings, and I just got goosebumps because I thought about all the great athletes who have represented our country before, who had been there and trained. And it also was athletes that are currently competing. I made the team. We went to Edmonton, Alberta, and I won my first gold medal in the World Championship game. Thank you. I remember winning that gold medal. I was a rookie on the team, but they had mixed up in a program and said I was a captain. So I got to go to get the trophy, held the trophy over my head, and I remember sitting there hearing the national anthem being played and just having goosebumps because I was there. My dream had become reality. I think about the adversity I overcame to be in that situation, then to represent our country. It was one of the greatest feelings. It also was addicting because after that, I wanted to win another medal. And the second team I made was 1996, the U.S. team, arguably the best team that I have ever played on. I remember going to the White House, meeting President Clinton, and he talked about how good we were and that we was going to win. Well, a funny thing happened in 96. We didn't win a gold medal. We didn't have an opportunity to even play. We lost to Australia in a semifinal game. Now, when you lose in a team competition, you don't get to win. Nobody said they win a silver medal. You win a gold medal or a bronze medal. But I remember when we lost and we was going to play in a bronze medal game, I had worked so hard to get there, I wanted to leave. I thought, this sucks. I don't want to play for a bronze medal. And we was going to boycott the Paralympics in 96. Now, we was hosting in Atlanta. I remember thinking about I should just go home. And one of the players told us that if you think this bad, think about what you have to do when you explain to your sponsor that you had an opportunity and you didn't take it. Now, we won a bronze medal, but for the longest, I was embarrassed by that medal. And then I realized that I was being really selfish because not a lot of people can say they had an opportunity to represent their country. And here I was representing my country, but I was selfish because all I cared about was the end result. And what's more important than the end result is the journey. So after I had to deal with the fact that, you know what, you don't get a lot of these opportunities. So could be it for you. I had an opportunity in 98, we won a gold medal, but in 2000, we went back to Sydney, Australia. Now, I'm in the same situation. I didn't win a gold medal, but I won a bronze medal in Sydney, Australia. But what was different was my journey along the way. I was really enjoying the opportunity of playing with my players, my teammates, representing my country. Also, I got an opportunity in Sydney in 2000. After the game was over, I proposed to my wife and asked her to marry me. So my wife and I have been together 23 years. We have 7 kids that we have. We adopted 7 kids. We have been foster parents, and throughout our life as a foster parent, we have had over 82 kids in our home. We still keep in contact with all of them. Actually, the first kid we ever had placed in our home, actually just had a baby, and he named his son after me. So that's pretty cool And I think about all the different things that in my life that I have been able to accomplish. I played from the U.S. national team from 94. I retired in 2006, and I coached the U.S. team. And coaching was totally different than as a player. When I was in London in 2012 coaching, I would get up at probably about 6 o'clock in the morning to start preparing for everything today, practice, teams, who we're going to compete, what if we play Australia, what if we play the Netherlands. But I didn't go to bed until about 3, so it was nonstop. And I think about one of the things that I'm really big into looking at, focus on what you can control. Whenever I would talk to my players, I would tell them that these are the things we can control: effort, intensity, intelligence, communication, awareness, desire, and focus. And I use that message for them every single game. And my guys will always know that if we take care of those things, you're going to be okay. And those things easily transfer where I think about being a director with Deferred Prosecution and how far I have came from growing up on the south side of Chicago. If you had told me when the day I got shot that I would be maybe talking to a Rotary Club here in Dane, Madison, I wouldn't have believed you. If you would have told me that I would have met 3 of the last 5 presidents, George Bush Sr., President Clinton, and President Obama, I wouldn't have believe you. But now I know that my mentality, that I'm always looking at certain things happen, and although I don't have control of those things, I can control how I react to it. You know, in my job, I work with a lot of young males, females who have dealt with trauma, who have dealt with all type of things. And all the things we're always looking at for how do you engage, educate, and activate them. Engage on a level that's relevant to them, resilient about relationship, and how they see themselves in the community. So I always figured out, how can I make whatever I have in contact, how do I help people to move forward, regardless of what trials and tribulation they have, and looking at them, how to change their perspective. Because most people, you think about, when things happen, adversity happen, we look at that as a bad thing. We don't look at that as an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for development, an opportunity to really reveal who you really are. Because in those moments, that's when it defines you. And I look at myself now as not defined by all the medals I've won, but more defined by the relationship I have developed. What's great about, I think about what my life is, and I'm still having, if you ask me where I'm going to be 5 years from now, I still have big goals and dreams that I want to accomplish. I'm still working towards it. What I love now that my kids get to see their father, but not how they see me, but how other people who talk to my kids. And, you know, it was great being over in Australia doing in England doing the Paralympics, and having people from other countries do videos to send it back to my kids. And my kids was at schools showing the people for history. They would say, hey, which country Melvin's going to have talk to us today? And so the school put it up on the board and say, hey, this is somebody. And I would tell them, hey, say hi to my kids. And they'll say hi. I'm like, out of that language, use Russian, speak Russian to them, come on. And so, but just being able to have those experiences. And I think I look at it and said that I have been really gifted and blessed. One of the things that I'm big to is, and I have a poem that I'll share with you that I have in my office that I look at every day. And it's be proactive every day, put the first thing first, and think about what you do and say. Before you say what's on your mind, seek first to understand. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, seeking a win-win all the time. Be proactive, give your all in all. Every day you renew and sharpen and solve. Working together with synergy, be proactive, follow your dream with passion, poise, purpose, confidence, integrity, and dignity. And if anybody, you probably have read the seven habits of highly successful people. Those are the words that I took from there, because I taught my kids the 7 habits of highly successful people. I also was a member of the president of the Governor's Council for the Lincoln Charter School in Whitewater that became the first leader in me school for the 7 habits. And that's one of the things that I'm always thinking, like, how do you be proactive? How do you think about how do you make society better? And the best way to do that, I always found, is looking inwards. Not what me trying to tell what other people can do, what I need to do better. You know, how do I be a better father? How do I be a better husband? How do I be a better person in my community? How do I help people in my community who are struggling to get to where I'm at, or get to where they need to be successful? And you think, working in the criminal justice system, I have dealt with a variety type of people, a lot of people who have dealt with a lot of different things. And you figured out, how, you know, people always say, how do you work with sex offenders? How do you work with people who have did some horrific things? You treat them with respect. You treat them with dignity. You treat them as people. You treat them with that how you would want to be treated. And I literally live by those things and really think that, you know what? I think there's no reason I look around this room and think that you guys are doing a lot of great things. And then really challenge yourself, where the young man was talking about having more people donate more money. You think about it, it's all for people who are struggling, you know, not to guilt you into giving more money, but but figuring out what can you do to make your community better. And that's where I think I live my life by, is figuring out I'm here not as a result of me just being awesome, but I'm here because other people have paved the way for me. Other people have bled and died for the freedom that we have in this country, the freedom that we take for granted at times. And I think at times we have to think about what it is that we just get up every day and not even think about it. For me, when I was 16 years old, every day I jumped up, got out of bed, got dressed. I never thought about what I had to do. But now I think about when I get up, you know, my life is great. People always ask me the golden question: if you could go back and change and not be in a wheelchair, would you do it? And I can tell you unequivocally, I still would want to be in a wheelchair, because my life is phenomenal. I think I'm the person I am today as a result of the adversity that I dealt with and that I had to overcome. Had I not dealt with those adversity, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be the director of the Deferred Prosecution Program. I wouldn't be a published author. I wouldn't be a father. I wouldn't be a great son. I wouldn't be a great husband. All those things, a mentor to all the different individuals I mentored because I had to experience those things. And you think about most people, we are the sum total of what I experienced and the books we read. I talked earlier about not liking to read. It's interesting that I'm a published author and I'm actually working on a couple of different books. I read a lot now. So, and it's great because, my kids, they're the same way. They love to read, and we always give them tons of books because we really want to figure out how do you engage, educate, and activate people. And also, I consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm always trying to learn. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to improve, just random things that I want to get better at. So. Yeah, we got time for questions. The question was about the Deferred Prosecution Program, how it's worked. So our program is a part of the District Attorney's Office in which if a person is arrested and charged with a crime, they can get diverted out the court system. One of the things we do when if they have to enter a plea, they come to us, we assess what their risks and needs are and determine program eligibility. So the person if they have mental health issues, we're going to have them get a psychological evaluation, we have them get into counseling, and then they have to follow whatever treatment recommendation, take medication as prescribed. If they have substance use disorder for alcohol and drugs, they have to have an assessment for that. If it's a domestic case, they're going to have to do certified abuse treatment. So we sort of like probation and parole agent, but the only thing different is the person hasn't been convicted. If they successfully complete our program, the case is dismissed and they don't have a criminal conviction. So we work with those individuals. If we have young kids, 17-year-old, if they have dropped out of school, we require that they get back in school. We also require that they have to be gainfully employed. They also, if they have did criminal damage to property or they have did something to the victim and with the victim is out of money, we collect restitution. In 2018, we collected over $126,000 in restitution that was paid directly to the victim. We also may have them write apology letters. They may do volunteer community service. Without community service, it's not a punitive thing. We want them to give back to their community. We talked about how you engage, educate, and activate, looking to engage on a level that's relevant to them, resilient about relationships, and how they see themselves in the community. And it's critical that they feel like they connected to this community. And so when you give them an opportunity to go back and give back to the community to repair the harm done, it improves them as their self-esteem and also them as a person. And typically during the year, I think we have probably about 1,000 cases that's diverted out of the criminal justice system. So you think about it, if a person's not going through the criminal justice system, that means that's an individual that's, you free up time for prosecuting attorneys to deal with more severe cases. Law enforcement doesn't have to go to court, so the judges doesn't have to have that on their calendar. So it frees it up for a lot of different things.
Are there any more questions? If so, raise your hand high. There's one.
Of those people that are diverted from criminal prosecution, how many of them successfully complete your course of conduct for them?
The last thing we had, it was about a 75% success rate. Now you have to think about a lot of the individuals we work with dealing with significant trauma. So at times they're not even in a position where they can move forward and focus on their contract. And so sometimes we end up sending people back to court as a result of, you can try as much as possible to help them move forward, but if they're not able to do the things that they need to do, because I think my program goal is to hold people accountable and change behaviors. And so if you're thinking about the behavior, if we're trying to change, if we can never get them to the point to change, we can't keep them in the program. So, but we do work really hard. Everybody that go through our program, they go through a grievance process because we are aware that it may be things that's happening in their life that prevent them from focusing on their contract. If I have somebody that's going through my program and all of a sudden they owe restitution, they lose their job, and they become homeless, we have to change their contract to allow for, hey, how can we find affordable housing? How can we get you access to affordable health care? That's been some of the things where we realize some of the people that we struggle with, they struggle with some of their basic needs are not being met. And we start trying to figure out how do you help them? How do you, if a person doesn't have access to insurance, or if they're working and they can't afford insurance and we have treatment requirements, they may end up not being successful as a result. Usually what we always try to do too, but if we're not keeping them. We're willing to accept them back if they are in different situation changes.
That's all right.
Okay.
Repeat the question.
Okay, how do people qualify for the program? In order for a person to qualify for the program, they have to be considered eligible. Typically, we have a couple different ways they can go through our program. A pre-charge, if the person has been arrested but they haven't been formally charged, typically with those cases, the assistant DA would contact me and say, hey, do you think this person appropriate? We have program eligibility as far as no charges within the last 5 years. Usually they haven't had repeat offenders, but it's because it's the prosecuting attorney case, the prosecuting attorneys have to look at the case and say, hey, do you think this person appropriate? And then typically they reach out to me and say, hey, Melvin, can you look at this case? And I'll review the case and say, yep, they're appropriate, make the referral.
Okay, question over there.
Hi, sir. Thank you for coming. Dealing with, as most of us know, that PTSD is very prevalent in the African American community, and being diagnosed with that is even rare. How do you folks go upon acknowledging and seeing someone with having mental issues?
Right. And like I said, we have a lot of people that have a lot of trauma that they're dealing with, whether you're looking at mental and different other things. Everybody who comes through our program, we do an intake assessment. That intake assessment typically is about probably between 90 minutes to 2 hours, where you're assessing what their needs are. And a lot of time you have people who are undiagnosed. We have a lot of time when I look at I have a group that I facilitate, the African American Male Initiative Group, working with young black males, really looking at how to change their paradigm. I have a lot of people who are self-medicating on THC and other different substances. And so when you start talking to them, you start realizing what the trauma that they're dealing with, that they haven't been diagnosed, they haven't been assessed, because certain community doesn't certain trust other community. And so it's hard for you to go to a doctor if you don't feel that that doctor's going to hear you. You're not going to be valued. And so when you start trying to work with them, a lot of times we find ourselves in a situation and trying to help them understand that, hey, you do have something going on. A lot of time, I think in the black community, they may say, well, he's just a little slow, or he's a little off. Not realize, like, no, he has significant mental health, and you have to treat it as such and try to figure out how to work with him and how to get him connected to the right resource within the community. I have a lot of people at some time, they clash with the resource that I refer them to. So you have to start thinking about what are resources that cultural competent that can really work with that individual and put them at a sense to make them feel comfortable. Now, the same way when I refer people with in my program, my staff member has an incredible ability to work with people, but sometimes you have to get past that mistrust of the criminal justice system. That's one of the most difficult things because my program is a part of the DA's office. And so when you go to court, you have the prosecuting attorney saying, I'm going to send you to prison, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Then they refer them to our program and we're like, oh, yeah, I know you was in court, but yeah, we work for them, but we want to help you. And then they look at you like, really? You work for the DA's office? And it's like, no. But then, so you have to break through that. But once people let down their defense, then they want to help you. And I think one of the things that I have been, my position as Director of Deferred Prosecution, before anybody is terminated from the program, they have to meet with me for a pending termination case review. And I have had a lot of young black males and females come in and say, you the director? And I'm like, yep, I'm the director. And they thought, man, I thought I was going to meet with an old white dude. And I said, well, the old white dude happened to be an old black dude. So, but then even though I'm holding them accountable and I'm saying that you have to do this, and if you don't do this, there are consequences, they appreciate that because they look at it as that I'm giving them opportunity. And that's what it's all about. You think about, they are dealing with adversity. How do you make this an opportunity for them? One of the things I'm big about is trying to figure out, I think it's like more people would be more successful when I talk to my young black males about putting them in a position where they can be bosses, investors, and owners. So I'm talking to them about the stock market. I'm talking to them about investment. I'm talking to them about a lot of things that they wouldn't have these conversations, and they end up having as a result of you going through the criminal justice system. We want you to be a better, more competent individual in the community. We want you to be out here productive. We want you paying taxes. We want you changing your community. How do you teach them leadership skills? So one of the most interesting conversations I have is when I'm talking about drug dealers about investing money in the stock market, because they get it. You think about the skills you have to be corporate, they do it, supply and demand, marketing, all networking. It's just how to get them to do it the right thing, just, yeah.
That's interesting. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for that presentation, Melvin. And we are adjourned.
I bet you